It's a rough life. Living up to Lassie, it's a rough life. Trying to be so classy when I'm going through the garbage for a midday snack. Knowing I'm in trouble when the folks get back. It's a rough life. When fleas live on your belly, it's a rough life. When people call you smelly, I'm developing a complex. I might need a shrink. They blame me every time that something starts to stink. It's a rough life. Begging for a cookie is a rough life. Never getting nookie. They chase me from the kitchen when I start to beg. They think that I'm perverted when I hug their leg.
Hi, welcome to the show. My name is Jesse Goldberg, and today we have Adam Dredd. And you were on the show like a long time ago.
Way long ago.
Remember Melissa was here?
Oh my gosh.
Melissa was the one I did the law show with, Common Law.
Absolutely. I think that's when I first ran for council.
Yeah, you were in the council.
Oh, I was just on the council. I was a newcomer.
Right.
1877, I think, was the year, and that was that was right around 2002.
Where were you a council member? What district?
Well, I actually was a councilman at large. I had the entire county, so I had to run the same race as the mayor and hit all 35.
Right, and what years was that?
Well, it was interesting. I got on a special election in 2002. And then I won the runoff to get on the council, and then I had to run again in 2003 and a runoff.
So you were actually on for 9 years.
Well, I had 4 elections within 2 years for 2 terms. I filled Howard Gentry's seat when he became vice mayor on a special election.
Oh, okay.
So I was there for almost 6 years, it turned out. And then I rolled off in 2007 because of term limits.
Right.
So now I'm back running for judge, something I've never done before.
So when did you become a lawyer? What year?
I went to law school in 2000 is when I started, actually. I first ran for council in '99 and lost. And then I thought, if I really want to be making laws, I should know more about the law. So I went to law school.
And you went to Nashville School of Law?
I did, the Knight Law School.
And that's like a 4-year program?
It is a 4-year program, absolutely. 2 or 3 nights a week.
That's where I took the bar exam.
Oh, good.
Nashville School of Law.
Well, you've taken several bars, haven't you?
1997, I think I did.
Wow.
That was the last one I took.
So you got California, New York, and Tennessee?
And Virginia.
And Virginia.
Yeah, I'm good at bar exams.
Absolutely. You should take them for people. There's
I
a lot
should.
of money in that.
I do. Don't tell anybody. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. Like, where are you from?
I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then moved to South Florida for high school. God's waiting room. And then I came here for college.
As my mother called it, the last stop.
It is the last stop. But I moved here for college. I came here for Vanderbilt University, and I fell in love with Nashville. And
Vanderbilt, that's a good school.
Absolutely.
You must have been smart.
Well, I wasn't smart, but I sat behind some smart guys. And no, I made it in by the hair of my chinny chin chin. But
and when you majored in
English and psychology.
Okay.
Kind of which I think a lot of lawyers actually are English majors, which is interesting.
I was a political science major.
Were you?
Yeah.
All right. And then you end up with your own TV show. So.
Yeah, now I'm a big star producer, you know.
Who knew? Who knew?
So after you went to law school, after you went to college, you became a comedian.
I did. I was a touring stand-up comedian for better half of a decade. And that was in the 80s when comedy clubs were booming.
Right, I remember. I was doing the same thing.
I think we were probably out there at the same time out in Hollywood back in the
We didn't know each other because I didn't like your act and you didn't like my act.
Exactly.
You didn't pay attention to.
If we had, we'd be doing each other's jokes right now.
I found that comedians, the reason why I kind of stopped doing it because they were always on. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get personalities. The comedians happened to be, I was around a lot of people, you know, in the entertainment business, and comedians always seemed to be the ones that you never get a straight answer from.
Right.
And then I realized I was one of those people too. Well,
it's paid off for you. Your music's awesome.
Well, thanks. The music, I decided to go back into comedy music. That's what I basically do now.
Well, see, I grew up listening to comedy music, and that's partially what got me into comedy. The old Dr. Demento show, which I think you've had some cuts on.
Right. Did you listen to Tom Lehrer or Alan Sherman or?
Oh yeah, and I have Alan Sherman albums still, and I've got Kermit Schaefer's "Pardon My Sports" blooper albums, and I had Laugh-In albums growing up, and I grew up with Laugh-In.
Well, you know, albums are back, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Vinyl is totally back.
Playing it yesterday, actually. Do you remember a band called Harper's Bazaar?
Yeah, they did the Feelin' Groovy song.
Exactly.
The
exactly.
Simon and Garfunkel song, 59th Street Bridge song.
I was actually 2 days ago in Pittsburgh. My father's turning 90, and he just brought up Harper's Bazaar, one of his favorite bands, asking me about music. And I went and I found the old 33, I guess,
Right.
and put it on the old turntable. And
Slow down, you move too fast.
that's it.
Yeah, that was. I remember when that song first came out. That it was one of those songs when the Simon and Garfunkel version I listened to over and over again.
Oh,
And it was
absolutely.
only like less than 2 minutes. It was
Oh,
like
yeah.
minute 40 or something. Anyway, so you moved back to you fell in love with Nashville. You were after Vanderbilt, and you stayed here the whole time.
I did. Well, I went on the road. You know, back in the '80s, not only did you have the big clubs like the Improvs and Comedy Stores, but and you had clubs like the Punchlines that are still around the country.
Right.
But you had the one-nighters. You had the Comedy Zones, which you do like a night in one little town, then the next little town, and then the weekend.
Were you
in a
an
big
opener,
town.
a middle, or a?
Started as an opener, and I only did that for about 3 or 4 months, and then I was a middle actor, a feature act, and I was pretty happy with that position because you didn't have to be all that funny, and
Right.
you only had to do 30 minutes. You didn't have to follow somebody really good, so it was less work.
It's kind of a lonely life.
It really is a very lonely life, and this was back before cell phones, GPSs.
Right.
You know, you had phone cards. You had to drive everywhere. Horrible, horrible hotels and motels.
Right.
And it really is very lonely. And it's interesting with comedians, and I'm sure you found this as well. You know, a lot of them spend so much time in front of so many people to just do the opposite, to have enough money to just be almost reclusive, because a lot of them really are reclusive.
Yeah, when I talked to Andrew Dice Clay, I mean, I was at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, and he came on, and I was, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to the Comedy Store, but
Played there and actually got in trouble with Dice at that club. But
oh really? Oh well, anyway, he was there, and I was talking to him. The guy was like the exact opposite of what he was. I don't know what he's like, and just that night he was exactly the opposite. You know.
yeah, he started doing dirty puppet show stuff, and then became a whole thing. He's coming back now, but I was there one night. He was writing jokes with Gallagher, which was probably the strangest combination of comedy minds.
I got a combination for you. I was in front of the Comedy Store watching a conversation between Andrew Dice Clay, Eric Clapton, and James Caan.
Wow.
I know. I said, what are they talking about?
Wow.
I'm just sitting there watching them.
Wish I had a cell phone then to tape that. But some amazing memories there. They put me up there opening for Tommy Davidson, who was on In Living Color. That was his first season, and it was kind of a showcase for him, and they had
Right.
his audience there, and then they threw in this kid from Tennessee, was kind of my act back then. So it was very interesting.
All right.
Interesting reception.
So let's
there.
go to the law. You became a lawyer, and after you got out of tell me a little about the council, though. before
Okay,
you-
so I served on the council for those 2 terms. I passed some fairly interesting laws back then. I wrote the law that all cab drivers must speak English. And before you
Really?
go, but I wrote that for a very specific reason, for a public safety reason. It's nothing against not speaking English. It was a public safety bill that said they must speak English, may not be on a cell phone with a passenger in the car. The passenger controls the route, the music, and the heat and air. What we found was we were getting complaints, and we were growing as a tourism city at the time, that over 70% of our cab drivers were Somali. And you've seen Captain Phillips. But
Right.
they're refugees in town, and they were never trained to work for gratuities. They thought the only way they were going to make money was to go on really long routes. And they were taking people on these just obnoxiously long routes, and we're getting all kinds of complaints. They all speak perfect English. They just wouldn't do it. So I made that a law, and to this day, I cannot get a cab in this town.
So what do you think about the new thing about 40 council people versus 27?
Well, you know,
like
we were
that.
called the 40 jealous whores when I was on the council, and I think it is too big. The government is too big in Nashville because it's really hard to get anything done. And then you have councilmen doing favors for one councilman in one district for another, kind of a tit-for-tat thing. I think it should be smaller, and frankly, what I would like to see is, you know, I was an at-large, and there were 5 of us and then 35 districts. I would like to see that almost as the at-larges would be more of a Senate, so it would have to pass the districts and then go to the at-larges who represent the whole city. The at-larges, really, a lot of our job was if you lived in Green Hills and your councilman wasn't returning your call, not saying that they didn't return calls in Green Hills,
Right.
but then you would call an at-large to step in. But the district people would be very offended by an at-large stepping in, so it almost crippled us in terms of what we could do.
Well, is anything else on the council that sticks out in your mind that, you know, that was accomplished while you were there? I mean, not that you started, but that was accomplished?
Well, of course, the budget's going through every year, and a lot of the sports deals. We really helped to track a lot.
Were you there
a
when
lot
the
of
Titans
business.
came?
I was there after the Titans came,
Oh.
but just in terms of renegotiating and things, and just I was chairman of conventions and tourism, so I was very involved with that, and also I was chairman of public safety, so involved with police and fire. Which, when I ran for council, I didn't run on education. So many council members say, "I'm going to make your schools better." The fact is, they can't do it. It's out of their jurisdiction. We elect a school board that has sole decision-making power in schools. The council really just can only write a check, approve the budget or disapprove the budget for the school board. So what we could do was public safety. So I was very involved in that. Actually, one of my bills that failed, and I don't mean to pick on the cab drivers, but I tried to pass legislation that cab drivers who take a yearly hospitality course, they have like a 2 or 3 hour course sponsored by the CVB, just teaches them the latest restaurants and things like that. But I wanted to add a half-hour CPR course to it. And they went ballistic. Well, they said, "We don't want to be liable, blah, blah." And I said, "You're not going to be liable. All you have to do is sit through the course. There's no test, but you're transporting humans." I think that's a little higher duty of care. And a lot of the people who take cabs are the elderly or people going to hospitals and doctors. And, there's a chance that they're going to need some help. Now, the actual numbers show that when people do use CPR, almost 99% of the time, out of 100, it's on a friend or family member. It's not a client.
Tell me about your law career before we run out of time.
Okay, we out of time already?
No,
we're flying.
We're going to run out of time. Tell me about your law career and
Sure.
what kind of stuff you did as a lawyer.
It's interesting. When I went to law school, I was 37 years old, and we didn't have email and computers when I was in undergrad. So the first thing I did my first day of law school is I hired a secretary. I never took a note the whole time I was in law school. I had one guy whose job was to tape the classes. Another guy would take it to the secretary to type it up, and then she would email it to me. And if you subscribe to my email service, you got all the lectures typed up. And instead of having to sit there and try and write down everything the professor said, you could actually interact with the professor, the Socratic method, which is what you're supposed to do. And I charged my classmates for it. I charged them 25 cents a class. So I lost money on it, but it got everybody vested in the program. So then I graduated from law school, and I took the librarian with me as my secretary. I won't say her age, but she's older than both of us, and she's with me to this day. So,
really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're still a lawyer right now, right?
I'm still a lawyer.
What kind of stuff do you do? Personal injury? You do divorces? Or do everything?
No, when I went out of law school, I worked with a small shop for a while, and then I was approached by Bart Durham's son,
to
open a firm.
It was personal injury then.
Absolutely. But I didn't do personal injury. We did some cases like we had the poison pet food recall case for Tennessee plaintiffs. That horrible case where the Chinese were putting melanin, this one company, in the food, and it was ruining kidneys of small animals.
That was a national case though, right?
Oh, well, we had this state.
You had the Tennessee state, okay.
Tennessee, it's very interesting, even though it's class action, Tennessee, which I think is brilliant, in Tennessee you can recover for loss of consortium of a pet, which is loss of affection of anything. But Tennessee is the only state where somebody shoots your dog, not only can you sue them, not only should they go to jail, but you could sue them for the value of the dog, but you could sue them for the loss of love of that dog for up to $5,000, which I think is one of the smartest things our legislature has
It's
ever
a
done.
good thing, but it should be up to like $100,000.
Oh, it absolutely should. Well, what I learned was from this case, and why I'm such an animal nut now, I met with so many of these folks, and the smaller animals were the ones most susceptible to dying from this poison because their kidneys are so much smaller. And a lot of our seniors have smaller animals because they're easier to care for, and a lot of cats and small dogs. And a lot of times they were widowed or widower, and this pet took the place of their partner. It was really a family member. And
I don't know what I'd do without my. So if you were elected judge now, you would do something about.
Well, yeah.
You would enforce the animal law.
Hammer time. I would actually be much more severe in terms of treatment of people that abuse animals. I mean, obviously abusing children is horrible, but that doesn't come into General Sessions Court a lot. The environmental court is covered by General Sessions Court. It's appointed to different judges. I would volunteer to take that. It's an extra docket every week. I'd be happy to do it, and I can guarantee anybody who hurts an animal or neglects an animal, leaves it outside in the heat, you're going to have a little more than a $50 fine to pay. You're going to you're going to learn to not do that.
They should have an animal court like they have a drug court.
They absolutely should.
Well,
it does fall under environmental, but I see.
Not everybody sees animals the same way that You and I see
Yeah.
them. They see them more like, well, just my dog, you know.
Yeah,
that kind
just
of thing.
chattel, just chattel,
Right.
and it's really not. And that's what I learned through that poison pet food case. But yeah, and I really think I'm actually very excited about getting in there and letting people know that in Nashville and Davidson County, we take animal abuse very, very seriously and neglect.
Well, what have you been in front of General Sessions? Of course, I'm sure a bunch of times, right?
I'm there, well, not as a
As a
defendant,
lawyer.
but I'm actually, that's the court I'm mainly in, and that's part of the reason I'm running for General Sessions Division 9. That's my courthouse and courtroom.
What are some of the things that go on there that need to be changed or that are good about it? You know?
Well, you know, I certainly.
Now, General Sessions is a do-over court, right? You
No, yeah, you can. You can appeal anything in
Right.
10 days.
Right.
So it's a people's court, and I think my life experience coming from comedy and radio and counsel, you know, a lot of times people don't have lawyers there, so the judge does need to be a little more interactive with them when they're
Right.
representing themselves. So, you know, that's really important to have that life experience. A lot of people are terrified, obviously terrified coming in there. So, you know, we're there to help them as well. But in terms of in the criminal arena, you know, I don't believe in locking everybody up. You know, I think there's bad people that are just evil people that have done something horrible and they deserve to be incarcerated. And General Sessions can do it for 1 year, 11 months, 29 days. But you've also got good people who've done something really stupid or irresponsible and could possibly do something else as opposed to being locked up in jail to teach them that they did wrong and maybe do some good for society. And then the third level is you have people with addictions and lack of life skills, which you can do into different programs. So I hope to work with the community and a lot of the religious community with life skills programs for a lot of those folks.
Well, what I tell people sometimes when they go to court is that you're going to go in front of somebody who doesn't know you from Adam.
There you go.
Doesn't know you at all, right? And they're going to make a decision on, and a lot of that decision is going to become on how you act.
Absolutely.
Because if you're acting like a jerk, the guy's going to not believe you. So you have to kind of,
A little psychology in there.
yeah, you've got to, you just remember that the judge doesn't know you at all.
Absolutely. Well, you know, one thing I'm going to do, here's one thing I am going to do completely differently that's never been done in Davidson County courts. I'm going to start every court session. Whenever the judge comes out and they say, all rise, I'm going to invite everyone in the courtroom to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm doing it for several reasons. One is the patriotic reason, and I think it's a good thing to do. But for that 1 minute while you're doing the pledge, the whole courtroom, whether you're a plaintiff or a defendant, a lawyer, a witness person, witness assistants, or a court officer, for that 1 minute, everybody's kind of together on one level, and I think it puts just a calmness across the room. I've seen it done in Williamson County, and it just kind of molds everybody together.
Maybe to make everybody more likely to tell the truth.
It might do that, yeah.
Because as a judge, you're going to have to try to figure out who's lying, who's telling the truth. And let me tell you something, people lie all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really hard to tell.
That's a hard thing for lawyers when, you know, you learn really quickly. Your client may be lying to you, and there's really a good chance they are.
Well, I always say there's 3 sides to every story, you know, his side, her side, and the truth. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you got to find that truth somewhere. And you're going to make mistakes. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, you're going to make mistakes. And everybody makes mistakes.
And, you know, I was trained as a mediator as well, which is important for the civil side of this court, which about 30% of the cases are civil. So kind of finding something in the middle. Basically, they say a sign of a good divorce is both sides are miserable. That's a good divorce.
Right.
But so hopefully we'll be able to work some things out. And I will use mediators in the court as well, and a lot of time trying to settle them. So
I'm looking at some of these notes here. It says guns in bars. Now,
that was another one of my big cases. I was on the team that sued the state of Tennessee for allowing guns in bars. Our legislature several years ago passed a law saying you can bring a gun into a bar.
It's pretty stupid because people are drunk and they're going to be shooting people.
Well, it's insane on so many levels. But you know, it's not a Second Amendment issue at all. There's, you know, there's nothing. There are restrictions on every amendment. Freedom of speech means you can't go in a movie theater and scream fire. You just can't do it. You have a right to own a firearm, but you don't have a right to take it everywhere. The guns and bars thing, and I'm a gun owner, but I don't want to be in a restaurant. And the way it was written, it wasn't a concealed weapon. It's open carry. It's wild, wild west. And if you're sitting there with your family at a restaurant that serves alcohol and some guy comes in with a giant gun on his holster, first of all, he has to be a licensed gun permit, has to have a carry permit. Whose job is it to ask if he has a permit?
I'm not going to ask. I'm going to another bar.
Or the $2 an hour waitress who's working there for the summer job? She's, excuse me, sir, can I see your permit? I don't have one. Bang. But even worse, what I'm worried about is not necessarily the responsible gun owner, and a lot of them are. What if, hypothetically, you're at a bar and the gun owner has to be sober? It's illegal to be drunk carrying a firearm. But what if there's drunks around them and somebody reaches for the gun, drops, hits the floor, fires, ricochets, and kills the bartender? There's OSHA issues and TOSHA issues, occupational safety issues there. So there's liability there. But as chairman of public safety on the council, I was interviewed by German television, and they were advertising Nashville as a wild, wild west. Why would you bring your family, or if you're a business owner, why would you bring your workers to a city where they could be hurt and you're liable?
Right. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Well, if on the bench, what would you think that the best quality a judge should have, or some of the good qualities a judge should have?
Fairness, civility, and justice. Camera 3, you're on.
Fairness, civility, and justice.
The best qualities, I really do think.
Impartiality, is it?
Absolutely. And that falls under fairness.
Using your brain when you, instead of following the exact book or something like that.
Well, I think you have to have really good life experiences. You have to understand that sometimes there's some underlying reasons for people doing things. And again, that gets to, it's against the law to smoke marijuana, but, this 19-year-old kid who comes in who's caught with a joint at the concert and was perhaps rude to the police officer and just kind of got jammed up, you have the power to not ruin that kid's whole life over a mistake.
Right.
And again, it got back to what you said a little bit earlier. Some people just come in there and they're rude to the judge or rude to the court officer, and it really can influence people. Now, dealing with hecklers as a comedian, I think I'm a little bit more ready for that.
How would you deal with hecklers in the courtroom?
Oh, we'll lock them up. No, I haven't seen it happen yet. You know what I have seen some judges do? If someone's very rude or just starts off being combative, the judges say, you know what, we're going to get back to your case in a bit. Why don't you go have a seat in the back? And they'll just wait till the end of the day.
Right. That's a
and
good way
kind
to do
of
it.
put them in timeout, if you will.
Here's a funny story. I was in Los Angeles, and I was in a courtroom, and I had my sunglasses on. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had my sunglasses on at the time. There must have been 1,000 people in there, right? And the judge stops in the middle of what he's doing and says, young man, take those sunglasses off. I look, that's me, I said, what's going on? Some judges go a little overboard, they do the Judge Judy thing,
Oh yeah, some will, like, if a cell phone accidentally goes off, they'll take it and keep it,
Right.
I wouldn't do that. I mean, there's ways to deal with that and take it away for the rest of the court session.
If they're having a bad day, they might, you got to understand that you can't have a bad day and take it out on the other people,
Sure.
But you know what? I just saw something on the internet that said Tennessee is the 3rd most corrupt state in the nation, and behind Louisiana and Mississippi and Louisiana. I don't know. It was one of those AOL things,
Well,
Huffington,
nobody reads AOL.
Huffington Post things,
Huh?
I don't know if it was how true it was.
About the court system or just
about everything. It was based on people getting convicted.
You do realize we have Memphis as part of our state, so that's a part of it.
Oh my God, I got to go to Memphis next week to court.
Are you the lawyer there, or you have a case you're in?
My girlfriend got stopped by, I'll tell you about it after.
Got
stopped by, for not looking in the mirror.
Go to www.judgedredd.com. We'll put the whole story up later. But not looking in the mirror.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. I'll tell you about it after. But it's I have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to drive all the way down there.
Oh my goodness.
Just to go to General Sessions Court. I hope I get a good judge. I have to represent her.
Absolutely.
By the time this is on, that'll be over.
Absolutely.
She'll be in jail for the next 10 years.
Oh, can't you do it in post and put up the results so people know?
I guess I could. So what else can you tell me about what you do as a judge, besides animals and being fair and anything else?
Well, I mean, again, you'll have all those
case-by-case basis.
Yes, you'll get a lot of the DUIs will come through there. All the misdemeanor cases will come through there. You have probation violations as well, which is a big part of what happens in there. You also have.
How do you judge somebody who's, on probation and you don't know if they're, do you drug test people? Or?
Well, you do.
You have the power to do that?
Well, and most there are probation officers that work for each judge, and depending on the crime, they do drug test them whenever they want. I'm not especially thrilled with how that's done.
You know a lot of people, how they pass drug tests, right?
Designated urinator? No.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
They take other people's urine and
Absolutely.
That's what happens.
Well, and then they have that golden seal and different, medications and different kinds of herbs you can take, but then it'll test too, like there's nothing in the sample, and that can jam up as well. Again, you know, what I don't really understand, and I personally would have problems with, like if you're convicted of DUI, technically, according to while you're on probation, you're not supposed to drink. Well, it's not against the law to drink. It is against the law to consume illegal drugs, and I've seen people jammed up because they tested positive for alcohol. Now, if it's such an extreme alcohol that they came in and they were driving and they came in to take their test and they were over the limit.
Before we run out of time again, who are some of the judges that we have now that you kind of look up to?
Oh my gosh, there's just so many of them.
Just give me a couple that you stand out for.
Gosh, Judge Holt, Judge Fishburne, and these are all over different courtrooms. Gosh, Judge McClendon, Judge Mondelli. I don't want to. Judge Robinson. There's just so many. Judge Dalton, Judge Turner. There, so many of them. We really do have good judges. And the judge seat I'm running for, the judge is retiring, or I wouldn't be running for the seat. I wouldn't have gone up against any of the incumbents because I really think they do a good job and they genuinely care. You know, I think it is a pretty good system. Like as a councilman, I think I can make it a little better. I think we can be a little bit more efficient, speed things up a little bit. Because I hate that people have to miss a whole day's work over a $50 issue. You know, there's just ways to speed things up.
Don't the lawyers go first in general session courts? How does that work?
They do in most courts. The lawyers do go first. Paid counsel goes first. And which is actually good for those people because a lot of lawyers are billing by the minute.
But don't you get to try the case? Say if you have a traffic violation, don't you get to try the case? Doesn't the cop come? I did this once. Cop comes up and tells the story, and then.
Sure. I mean, if it gets to that level, sometimes the first time you meet, it's just really for settlement, and then if they don't take the deal, then the officer's subpoenaed on a lot of cases. In most kinds of general sessions cases, and yeah, you do get your day in court. Unfortunately. Now, I'm not saying in our courts it happens, but there's something that I call a trial tax. So let's say you're just plumb guilty. And you were rude to the officer, you pulled over for DUI, you had an accident in the car, you hit somebody, and then you want a full trial and you're found guilty. Well, right now on a DUI, there's a minimum sentence to serve of 48 hours, but a maximum of 11 months, 29 days. Right, so the judge can tax you. They can make you serve more than 48 hours.
Just for going to trial and protecting your rights.
Well, protecting your right, but also if you've just really wasted the court's time. If you came in there and you had no case, you were offered a good deal, and then you started calling people liars, and you were abusive to the court system, and you made those other people wait who have the right to a trial because they actually have a legitimate beef.
Okay, well, Adam, it sounds good, and good luck on your
Has this been 27 minutes already?
What day is
Well, early voting starts July 18th through August 2nd at about 6 different sites.
July 18th through August 2nd.
And then the main date is August 7th, and that's everywhere in Nashville.
August 7th.
All of Davidson County, and all that will be on www.judgedredd.com. Or if you like Adam Dredd for General Sessions Judge on Facebook, all that information is there as well.
All right, Adam, well, thanks a lot, and we got to go.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next time on another edition of the show.
Living up to Lassie, it's a rough life. Trying to be so classy when I'm going through the garbage for a midday snack. Knowing I'm in trouble when the folks get back. It's a rough life. When fleas live on your belly, it's a rough life. When people call you smelly, I'm developing a complex. I might need a shrink. They blame me every time that something starts to stink. It's a rough life. Begging for a cookie is a rough life. Never getting nookie. They chase me from the kitchen when I start to beg. They think that I'm perverted when I hug their leg.